All right, something a little different on the program this week is we have our second member of the All Elite Wrestling roster joining us. We spoke with Jake Hager following the weigh-ins before his recent win for Bellator MMA, and now we're being joined by fellow member of the Inner Circle, which you can check out Wednesday nights on AEW Dynamite on the TNT network. Happy to be joined by one of the best in the business, in my opinion, in the ring and on the mic, none other than Mr. MJF. How are you, sir?
I don't know, one of the best. Let's keep it real here. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the youngest and fastest rising star in the history of professional wrestling, the best talker, the best wrestler. I am indeed a part of the greatest faction in all of professional wrestling, the Inner Circle. Jake Hager is my boy. He's undefeated, as am I, and I am very excited for this interview. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great.
I'm just kidding. I couldn't give less of a shit. Just fire away the question so I can get in and get out of here.
Well, I will say this is a real treat for me, sir. I'm sure that, I'm sure there's a million other things you'd rather be doing than talk to me, but I do appreciate the time nonetheless.
That number was very accurate.
Okay. Well, I mean, first of all, I mentioned Jake Hager, as did you. And when he and I spoke before his last fight for Bellator, it was about a week after you and Chris Jericho had the epic performance on Dynamite while in the midst of a steak dinner. He put you over in a big way, shined a light on all of your talents in and out of the ring, the work you've been doing in AEW. And, you know, Jake's been in the game for a while now. What has it been like being able to work with and now be in the Inner Circle with a guy like Jake Hager?
Oh, man, Jake's my big buddy, dude. I love that guy. I'm sure he appreciates this incredible addition to the Inner Circle that is me. And I appreciate him. He's big. He's brooding. He might seem scary to other people, but to me, he's just my big buddy. And I love palling around with him.
The man remains undefeated as a mixed martial artist, got tested in a big way in his last fight by Brandon Calton, but he got the victory. Really fun fight. And those two guys just went in the cage and beat the hell out of each other, MJF. Did you watch the fight? And if so, what did you make of Jake's performance and his ability to overcome a little bit of adversity in there?
First of all, how dare you for even asking that? Of course I watched the fight. Of course I'm going to back up my friends, right? I'm part of the Inner Circle. I got to see that fight. It was an incredible fight. It was hellacious. Very back and forth, but at the end of the day, the greatest man in the bout prevailed. He looked bruised and bloodied, but that's what the art of war is, man. It's not pretty, but he got the job done, and that's what the Inner Circle does. We always get the job done.
Are you typically an MMA fan? Like, I know you're a very, very busy man. It takes a lot to get invested into the sport with all the things going on in your life, I'm sure. But do you partake in the world of mixed martial arts when you can, whether or not Jake's fighting or not?
I actually enjoy the UFC very much. And actually, when I was much younger, I was big into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and boxing. I was actually really big into boxing. I would train with a guy by the name of Randy Gordon. He's out of the New York area. I don't know if you're aware of who Randy is. I believe he has a show on Sirius XM. And I honestly, in the words of one of my favorite movies of all time, I most certainly could have been a contender. But the reality of the matter is I knew what I wanted to be, and that was a pro wrestler. But yeah, I was a very good boxer at a young age. So I've always followed MMA. I've always found it very interesting. I always thought it might be something I want to dip my toe into later on. And if I'm going to do it, I can assure you I'm not going to, lose, because that's honestly very embarrassing. And it's not something I ever plan on doing ever in any sport. But as of right now, my mind, my heart, my soul is completely focused in and honed in on the sport of professional wrestling. And I intend on becoming, honestly, the greatest world champion in the history of that great sport. But is MMA something I'm interested in? Absolutely. Is it something I watch? Absolutely. I enjoy it very much.
Did you have any amateur boxing bouts?
So I never had an amateur boxing bout, because what occurred was I would spar in my gym. I'd knock guys out, but I'd spar in my gym. And I never got to do a bout because I was doing it from 12 to pretty much 16, but I had to stop strictly because of football. I don't know if you know my background story, but my coach made me stop doing amateur wrestling and any other, sports in general, just because he didn't want me to get injured. I had numerous full ride offers and scholarships. I got one for middle linebacker position out of Plainview, Long Island, New York. And I went to that college, and after a week, I just decided to leave because, again, I wanted to be in the sport of pro wrestling. That was the only sport I was interested in.
One of the things that sticks out to me about you, and you sort of mentioned is you fell in love with pro wrestling, but you're also a giant student of the game. Like, I've watched some old interviews, and while a lot of wrestling fans growing up, I mean, I'm like 13 or 14 years older than you, we're watching WWE WWF at the time, WCW, and you're the kind of guy that you just got so immersed into it. You watched everything you can find, and clearly, the MMA world, the UFC in particular, a lot of what has made them successful is taking a lot of the roots that professional wrestling has brought into the world, and they use that to promote big fights, build stories, etc. Clearly comes from the world of professional wrestling. When you do get to watch the UFC, is that something that you notice and take away from it as well?
Well, the word I'd use is stealing. That is exactly what MMA has done, and they've done it very well. Don't get me wrong. I believe Bellator and UFC and all of these companies should be very proud of themselves. Pride back in the day. I genuinely love what they're doing, but at the same time, I feel that's what AEW is doing. I believe that when we're doing it right, we're presenting professional wrestling as sport. Even though sometimes when we are on screen, I like to have a little bit of fun. I do whatever the fuck I want, if I'm being completely blunt, because I can. But at the end of the day, when it's go time, it's sport-based professional wrestling, and that's because pro wrestling is a sport and it's meant to be a sport. And I might be singing and dancing one week, but the next week, if I want to, I can bite somebody's nose off and absolutely break them in half in a wrestling ring. So,
you being, as you said, the best talker in the sport of professional wrestling, what do you make of the promo skills of guys like Conor McGregor, Colby Covington, guys like that? Because they both have admitted that they pull a lot of their personalities and their traits in promoting fights in that way from the pro wrestling world. So when you hear these guys talk and promote fights, how would you grade their delivery and what they bring to the table in that aspect?
I think it's cute in comparison to me. It's laughable, but I think they're great in the world of MMA. If either of those two guys came into the world of AEW, they would be in a lot of trouble. They'd get absolutely verbally bent over, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But for what they do, I really enjoy what Conor McGregor did in the UFC. Colby Covington, somebody who understands how to get a reaction out of a crowd, whether positive or negative. And I enjoy what both of them did. But could they spar with me? No, absolutely not. That would not be good. I don't think that'd be good for anybody, honestly. It'd be uncomfortable.
I think I would have to agree with you on that, but I want to talk about you and kind of your story into the world of wrestling. Like, I know that you could watch a lot of interviews, but like I said, I'm a bit older than you are, but I remember becoming a wrestling fan at 4 years old. My older brother bought WrestleMania 3. I watched the Can-Am Connection against Cowboy Bob Orton and the Magnificent Morocco, the opening match of that card, 93,000 fans, and I immediately was just hooked, even at 4 years old. Do you remember match, event, maybe a wrestler that you saw for the first time that hooked you and that made you just think, man, like, this is freaking awesome?
Well, the first match I ever watched, I was at Hollywood Videos with my father at the time, and I stopped and I saw this dude who looks like a zombie on the front of a cover, and I was like, who is this? What is this? And I brought it home. I popped it in my TV, and I skipped all the way to the match. On the back of the DVD disc, it said Hell in a Cell. And the first match in full I ever watched was Mankind versus Undertaker in a Hell in a Cell match. So that was the first match I ever watched. So instantly I was hooked. And the first match I ever went to where I was like, oh, I'm going to do this, was the first ever Elimination Chamber in Madison Square Garden. I remember Shawn Michaels won the match. He was a bloody mess with his weird Dutch boy haircut, and he hit the pose. And I just looked to my left, looked to my right. Everybody was standing and screaming and yelling and crying. And I just remember tugging my dad on the arm and being like, yeah, I could do that. So that's where we're at now. And I was right.
And how did your dad react to that? Was he like, I believe you could do this? Or was he doubting it at first and then you kind of built that upon him? Like, what was that conversation like?
Well, I don't think a lot of people had an idea that the little Jewish kid from Long Island was going to be a professional wrestler and a megastar. But that came with the territory. I was born with a chip on my shoulder. I still have a chip on my shoulder. I will have that chip on my shoulder until everybody worldwide understands that I'm the biggest star living and breathing in the world today. And trust me, it's coming up soon. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people, when I bring it up, they'd be like, that's a ridiculous thing, but okay. Especially the football coach that spent all that time, money, and effort to get me to college. He wasn't too happy about it. But now I'm sure he's watching me on TV, and it is what it is.
You were born as the wrestling world began its sort of resurgence. I mean, it was booming in the 80s, mid to late 90s. That's when it really took off. Attitude Era, Monday Night Wars, got such a buzz. Like Monday night was automatic. It was the night to sit down and watch pro wrestling. ECW was doing its thing as well. But being the kind of guy you are, a student of the game, to be in the spot with AEW in the midst of your own sort of ratings war on Wednesday nights, you have guys like Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone calling your matches. It's kind of like a nice mix of nostalgia on top of the evolution of the wrestling business over the last 5 to 10 years, is it not?
Yeah, I can't agree more with that. Now Wednesdays is the night to watch wrestling, and now the star to watch is me, MJF. I think it's awesome that we get to sprinkle my legendary rise with guys like Taz and Jim Ross and shitty Tony Schiavone. Yeah, it's great. But realistically, every Wednesday, the reason why people tune in, and it shows if you look at the ratings quarterly and minute for minute, the reason they're tuning in is because they want to know what I'm doing the next week. What is MJF doing? What is he going to do next? That's because unlike everybody else in our roster, I have it, and I have an abundance of it. And I love making people lay down in bed at night, put their head on their pillow and go, God, I hate that guy. Better tune in next week. And that's that. I think we're in a beautiful, and people are going to look back at this era of professional wrestling as the golden era of professional wrestling, a new one, if you will. To me, my favorite version of professional wrestling was World Class and Global. And, that's more me, Memphis, Mid-Atlantic. To me, the territory days is what I love to watch the most. But now I feel like we're almost in a resurgence of, you have a lot of these journeymen who, 10 years ago, I don't even know why I'm saying 10 years ago. Our company's only been around for a year and a half. So let's just call a spade here. A year and a quarter ago, these guys, these incredible professional wrestlers who might not have been used properly by, let's face it, the monopolized company that was WWE at the time, they had nowhere to go. And now they do. And now the people can be showcased properly, and it's sink or swim. And if you don't make it in AEW, the only person you have to blame is the person you see in the mirror. You're not being held back in AEW. Nobody's handing me a script in AEW, because I know if they did, I'd chew it up and I'd spit in their face. That's what All Elite Wrestling is. We're all going out there and we're doing our thing. We're doing our version of what we feel the sport of professional wrestling is supposed to be. And what I feel the sport of professional wrestling is supposed to be is just me, my face, 24/7. And if we can be honest here, it's working out for All Elite Wrestling, which is why they signed me to a 5-year deal.
Do you feel like that's the secret to AEW's success right now? The freedom, the ability to kind of, in a way, be your own boss. Like you get to do whatever you want. You get to do your own thing. No one's holding you back. And I feel like there's a camaraderie amongst the men and the women in the locker room that feel the same way. Do you feel, and the in-ring product is great too, but do you feel like that attitude, that's been the biggest secret to the success of AEW thus far?
I don't know about the camaraderie thing. I stay in my own trailer. Everybody else kind of smells. But as far as the belief system there, yeah, absolutely. I came in as a preliminary guy. They handed me a microphone while Bret Hart and Hangman Adam Page were in the ring, and they said, go. And I smiled and said gladly. It's that simple. And that's all it took for me to become a star overnight. And that can happen to any given person on any given night. Even schmucks like Marco Stunt, if he figures it out one day, maybe he can be a star. Probably not as big as me. It'll probably never happen. But you never know. That is the opportunity with AEW. Anybody is going out there on any given night, and they're given the opportunity to give it 110%. And if they got it, they got it. Like I said, it's sink or swim, baby. That's what All Elite Wrestling is all about.
In my line of work, I'm glad I'm talking to you. Kind of mixes up things a little bit for me, because we're immersed in what's going on in MMA, and we write about Dana White and Scott Coker and other promoters, and there's some good and some bad to each of those guys depending on who you talk to. What has it been like working for somebody like Tony Khan?
Tony Khan's my best friend. We talk every day. We hang out on his yacht a lot, eat a lot of caviar, talk about the business. Tony Khan's a great guy. He understands what he has, and by what he has, I mean me. And he understands that he's got to treat me properly. And he does. He most certainly does, as he treats all of his talent properly. But let's face it, you want to treat the ace, which is me. Let's be honest. I know Cody Rhodes is walking around pretending he's the ace, but it's me, to the best of your abilities. But that's what Tony Khan does. He's an incredible boss. At the end of the day, there's no leash on me. There's no leash on anybody. And I couldn't ask for a better boss to work for. The guy understands who's got it and who doesn't. He understands how to emphasize people's strengths and weaknesses. It's a lot easier to deal with me because I have no weaknesses, but still, he's just an incredible, incredible boss. I couldn't put him over anymore. And also an incredible person. And
now you're getting to do a lot on television with a guy like Chris Jericho, a guy that I have always felt throughout my pro wrestling.
Oh, yeah. Go on.
Yeah, I feel like he has always been extremely underrated as a talent. He definitely was in WCW, definitely was early on in his WWE career, and he's just continued to evolve throughout this 30-year career. And it really has been, if you really look back at the history of wrestling, which I know you do often, it's been an incredible run. What has it been like to work with Chris and even get in the ring with him at Full Gear?
He's the king of reinvention, and also we have so much mutual respect for one another. And I believe the mutual respect's there is because Chris always refers to me as an old soul. And I'd have to agree with that. I mean, I love everything old school, and I understand this business, but nobody understands this business inside and out more than Chris Jericho, and that's just a fact. So the fact that I get to hang out with this guy, he pick his brain, we get to talk, we get to work together, and honestly, it's not this weird partnership. It is 110% 50-50, whether it's inside of the ring or outside of the ring. There's just an insane amount of mutual respect there. The guy's a legend. I genuinely feel in 10 years from now, when it's all said and done, people will look at what Chris did, not just for AEW, but for the whole industry. He'll be revered easily as one of the greatest of all time, as if he's not already. He truly is. But I think it'll only be cemented more. Think about what he did. He jumped again from that monopolized company, came to AEW, and you think that didn't help everybody that was working in WWE? You think all those guys in WWE didn't start getting paid and compensated more out of fear that they would jump as well? No, it did. He didn't just help himself. He helped the whole entire industry. He was able to help strengthen a new brand, and he was also able to help strengthen everybody's checks and pockets, because now it's not a monopolized industry anymore. He changed the game, and I think everybody should be thanking him for that every day. That's one. Two, what was it like wrestling him? It was incredible. I believe that that what we did out there was great. I think that it's very obvious Chris is still in the prime of his career. He can still go. As it is very obvious, I am already there. Let's face it. I've beaten Cody Rhodes. I've beaten Chris Jericho. I've beaten them all. I would have beat John Moxley if he didn't cheat, but that's a different story for a different day. Probably should be in front of a court of law, if we're being honest. But yeah, man, it felt great to be in there with Chris. And, I hate to say it, but it felt great to win too. Let's be honest. Did I see it coming? Yes, but it wasn't easy. I can tell you that much. It wasn't easy at all.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying about Chris because, anyone you talk to, it's always, people talk about the Hogans and the Austins and the Rocks of the world when talking about like legendary runs in the sport, even like the John Cena's of the world. But, I asked Jake Hager this and he thought, it absolutely was. The run that Chris Jericho has been on this business is the best ever, in my opinion, especially with the longevity, being a top guy, his ability to get fans invested. The stuff he did with New Japan was unbelievable. The stuff he's doing in AEW now is unbelievable. Like, in terms of actual wrestling runs, this has to be the best or one of the best of all time.
And as a student of the game myself, and it sounds to me like you're a student of the game as well, obviously not as great of a student as me, nobody is. But if you watch Hulk Hogan in his last leg run there in WCW, he wasn't having the type of matches that Chris Jericho is having, not even close. And the sick thing is Chris is just getting started. I can't stress enough how great he is in the ring. Obviously, I must be a little bit better. I won. We don't need to get into that. I love and respect Chris. I'm just throwing that out there. But he's the dude's a gold mine, and I couldn't be happier to be working with him. And that's just the fact, man. That's just the facts. And like I said, the best thing is he doesn't have to be going 50-50 with me. He could just be looking me straight in the face when I walk into a room and going, "Here's what's going to happen, kid." And that's not the case. Everything has been genuinely a team effort, as it has been a team effort with everybody in the inner circle from the start. I love my little buddy, Sammy Guevara. He's the bestest in the world, I think, is his catchphrase. Bestest in the world. I don't remember. And I love everybody in there. It's great. Everybody in there is great.
being now in the inner circle and like you said, 50-50 with Jericho, there's a lot you can pick up from him. Where do you see yourself, I don't know, a year from now in AEW? Like what kinds of visions are you seeing for yourself? Heck, not just for yourself, but for the promotion itself 1 year from right now?
Oh, well, I see myself being the AEW world champion. I mean, that's final. That's obvious. I think everybody sees that coming too. I would be the world champion right now, again, if Dictator John didn't cheat, but I'm not trying to talk about that right now. He's a piece of shit. Sorry, I have a really bad cough. I promise it's not the Rona. And yeah, man, I see myself being that AEW world champion. And moreover, I don't think people should be shocked if they start seeing me every now and then on possibly the big screen or in TV or music. Because I'm a very multi-talented, multifaceted guy. And that's something that I definitely foresee in my future.
Anything in the works?
I can't answer that, bud.
You could just like say yes or no. You don't have to tell me exactly what it is.
I don't even know what you just asked me. I'm very busy. Do you have any other questions?
All right, I'll give you one more because and excuse the cheesy nature of the question, but call me curious throughout this conversation. But you mentioned the territory days and how much you enjoyed watching those. So if you could go back like in the DeLorean and be part of any of these great eras of professional wrestling, promotion, regional territory, any sort of time frame, where would you go just to see like, how you would fare?
Well, if I have to be honest, I've thought about this myself, and my instant answer is 80s territory days. And then I stop myself and I go, maybe the Attitude Era. And then I stop myself and I go, what am I talking about? I'm needed right now. And the reason I say that is because here's this new brand. It has every opportunity, again, not just the wrestlers, but the brand had every opportunity in the world. It's sink or swim. And we've been swimming, and not only swimming, but swimming well. We've now beaten Raw in key demo, I believe. I know more than twice. And that's huge. That hasn't happened in, 25, 26 years, I think? That's crazy. But again, that wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for guys like me. And that's just a fact. I'm one of the top ratings draws on Wednesday nights. Hell, I'm one of the top ratings draws in all of professional wrestling. So I'm needed right now because right now we're creating a resurgence of real, true, and pride professional wrestling. Not sports entertainment, but professional wrestling. And I'm really proud to be a part of that. I'm proud to be the face of it. I'm proud to be on the forefront. And yeah, so my answer is right now because I'm needed right now. Those marks right now need MJF more than they ever could have possibly needed me 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Well, I don't know how you feel, MJF, but this was great. It was an honor, honestly. You are absolutely killing it. I'm so glad we were able to make this happen. I appreciate your time. I wish you nothing but the best for you and AEW, and I wish you a happy holidays, sir.
This was probably the worst interview I'd ever done. I hope you have bad turkey. Good day, sir.